Foundation, and I am the dominatrix of today's event. Okay. Now, two things. First of all, my mother told me never to take credit when I didn't deserve it. So first of all, yes, these shoes, which are sort of purple rain meets blue suede shoes, and are on sale at Macy's, are Kenneth Cole, just so you know. So they're on sale. And secondly, not to take credit, as generous as many of you have been to thank me for the artist we saw yesterday, and I'm sure you're going to feel the same impulse today, I had nothing to do with the selection or curation of this. I've been simply asked to pass the mic. The person that I think you should thank most ardently for today's lineup and yesterday is the man that I yesterday described as the dignity of Prince Andrew, the bad boy behavior of Prince Harry, and the fashion sense of Kate Middleton. So please join me in thanking again the great, estimable father of us all, Tom Peterson. Okay. My definition of a good conference is that it does three things for you. That you meet somebody you'd never met before and you form a bond that's going to sustain you and nourish you in months to come when things are hard. That you get some real practical nuts and bolts ideas that you can translate into your work when you go home. And that you have the opportunity to step outside a box and have your mind blown. I had a fantastic day yesterday in that regard, and I hope you had the same. And if for some reason you didn't, you got 24 hours left, and so get cracking. Now, for those of you who missed yesterday's session, this Idea Lab is a deliberately eclectic mix of artist presentations that are interspersed with videos designed that are to stimulate new perceptions and ideas about the arts in changing times. Plenary sessions that, again, I'll remind people, can be continued further should you elect to do so in the first breakout time slot by going to an artist salon that each of today's artists will be hosting. Each of the artists in this format is strictly limited to 8 minutes, which already I know feels too short and draconian, and it's fallen to me to be the Ebenezer Scrooge to enforce the time limit. If you see me starting to applaud, this means that they have overrun their time, and I ask you to join me in expressing collective thanks so we can all keep on track. And yes, I know you'll hate me for doing it, and I'll hate myself, etc. So, with all that said as setup, first up today is Claire Chase, an arts entrepreneur and a flautist. You say nudist, I say nowadays. Let's call the whole thing off. Okay. Who is forging a new model for commissioning, recording, and live performance of contemporary classic music. She is the artistic director of the International Contemporary Ensemble known as ICE, which many of us are huge fans of, which she co-founded in 2001. And I hope if you have not experienced them, you rush to do so at the first available opportunity. Here today to explore an artist-run approach to a rapidly changing climate in the arts, please join me in welcoming to the stage Claire Chase.
Thank you. For the record, it's fluter, not flutist or flautist. Good morning. It's a total pleasure to be here. ICE was formed in late 2001 by a kind of motley crew of Oberlin graduates. And we were inspired by a very simple idea, the essential dictionary definition of the word contemporary, particularly the phrase coming into being, which for us implied a liquid process, a process that is rooted in change. And at the time, we were about to enter a world with dwindling job opportunities for the performance of classical, let alone contemporary music. And we had this nutty idea that we could create a new kind of organization dedicated fearlessly to the contemporary practice and to the practice of change in the truest sense of the word. We imagined an organization that would be national, not just based in one city, eventually international in scope. We even joked about one day performing in outer space. And an ensemble that was also changeable and modular, its very nature. It could be a single performer on a tiny stage one night and a cast of thousands in a stadium the next. We imagined an organization that was driven by artists, not by managers, by ideas, not by market forces, and above all by the conviction that change is really the most wonderful and exciting and definitely unavoidable part of what makes us great as artists and as organizers. And so 10 years later, about 650 premieres later and 1,000 concerts later, we have created that organization. And the bulk of the work that we've done has been by emerging artists in our generation. We're working toward having a 100-concert season next year on 5 continents, still working on the outer space thing. And our budget, which has grown consistently since our very modest beginnings of $603, is just this year, it's sort of off the screen here, but it's just past $1 million. And our commitment to change, we like to think of as an artistic practice, a creative practice that applies to everything that we do in the studio, and increasingly it also applies to our business model and our vision for creating a new kind of performing arts organization in the 21st century that's truly artist-driven in its maturity, not just in its infancy. So I'll be walking through a couple of our new initiatives that illustrate this, but I'd like to show you a brief video of some ICE in action. This video is part of, thank you. This video is part of a new initiative at ICE called Digitice, which is our homegrown public library of streaming ICE performances, filmed in HD and made available within 10 days of each ICE concert. And Digitice was started, like most projects at ICE are started, with a group of artists sitting around brainstorming about how we could create something impossible. So the Berlin Philharmonic has this multi-million euro project called the Digital Concert Hall. And we thought, okay, how could we, as a DIY, scrappy American outfit, do what they're doing? And how could we do it with the great Benjamin Franklin ideal of public access to great culture as our MO, rather than exclusive access? And so we did it. We basically started this web space, and it now has hundreds of videos. Our aim is to reach over 1 million viewers in the next 3 years. And importantly, Digitice, like everything at ICE, is managed not by a group of administrators, but by the ICE artists themselves, and in particular by our very talented percussionist, Ross Carr, who is a filmmaker as well as a deeply gifted musician. So you can browse just about everything that we've done in the last season at this space. Another key artist-driven initiative at ICE, also started in a similar manner of brainstorming session, is our signature young composer and emerging artist development program called ICE Lab. And a few years ago, we found ourselves frustrated with existing models, creative models, and also funding structural models for the creation of new work. We really needed to develop work at a pace and with a collaborative depth that wasn't available to us. And so we wanted a program that really broke down the barrier between the artist and the organization, between the composer and the performer, and between the organization and the public, the audience. So we created ICE Lab, a kind of grown-up sandbox for the creation of new work, where ICE musicians work in very close collaborative proximity with composers, even before a single note has been written, and the audience is invited into that process, watching artists and composers shape works out of stardust. And the program is just 3 years old now, but we have commissioned over 50 works by composers working in the crossroads of various disciplines. And these have been performed in upwards of 200 performances and counting around the world on 5 continents. Still working on the outer space thing. Another ICE innovation that, like everything, was born of a frustration with existing models and the desire to change those models is our education program, which we call the Listening Room. And the Listening Room, in lieu of offering elementary school kids, blue plastic recorder lessons or C major scale etudes, it's exactly that, a room in which we listen to ourselves, to our sounds, the sounds around us. And kids use their creative instincts to make scores, graphic scores, color-coded to what the instrumentalists rather are wearing. You can see our bassoonist here in her fabulous orange frock. We do some Socratic rehearsals and in-class back and forth. And these kids come up with things that look like this that, for me, often put my graduate doctoral students' compositions to shame. And our conviction here is that teaching and performing for ICE and for the 21st century musician are really part of the same job. This is probably the best fan mail we've ever gotten. So what all of these initiatives, Digitize, ICE Lab, and the Listening Room, have in common is that it's the artists, the ICE artists, who are in the driver's seats of these programs. And there's a lot of talk these days about artist-driven organizations. And at ICE, we're working on a fairly radical new model to absorb a core of ICE artists rather than hiring outside staff in running not just the creative but the operational direction of the organization. And what's new about this is not that artists are cultural entrepreneurs because they have to be, because that's the story of every organization. We all start when we're broke. But at ICE, this is a very intentional philosophical choice to embrace a new model for the truly 21st century artist-driven organization. So I very much look forward to continuing this conversation with you after the session, and thank you so much for your time.
I live near this house, and I thought about how I could make it a nicer space for my neighborhood. And I also thought about something that changed my life forever. In 2009, I lost someone I loved very much. Her name was Joan, and she was a mother to me. And her death was sudden and unexpected. And I thought about death a lot. And this made me feel deep gratitude for the time I've had, and brought clarity to the things that are meaningful to my life now. But I struggle to maintain this perspective in my daily life. I feel like it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and forget what really matters to you. So with help from old and new friends, I turned the side of this abandoned house into a giant chalkboard and stenciled it with a fill-in-the-blank sentence: "Before I die, I want to." So anyone walking by can pick up a piece of chalk, reflect on their lives, and share their personal aspirations in public space. I didn't know what to expect from this experiment, but by the next day, the wall was entirely filled out, and it kept growing. And I'd like to share a few things that people wrote on this wall. Before I die, I want to be tried for piracy. Before I die, I want to straddle the international dateline. Before I die, I want to sing for millions. Before I die, I want to plant a tree. Before I die, I want to live off the grid. Before I die, I want to hold her one more time. Before I die, I want to be someone's cavalry. Before I die, I want to be completely myself.
You know, I know part of the frustration with this format is the short time limit. Candy's speech, I was actually at that TED conference. It's from the TED Global. It's on TED.com. I urge you to watch the entire presentation because it is remarkable. And Claire as well. I mean, you just got a taste of ICE. Please, please, please rush if they're coming in the town nearest you. I did dress to be the bassoon today, if I had the shoes, as you know. Okay, next up is Tim Carpenter, the host and producer of Experience Talks, a radio show, and founder of Engage, with the emphasis on age, a nonprofit that changes aging and the way people think about aging by transforming senior apartment communities into vibrant centers of learning, wellness, and creativity. Here to tell us a particular story about the transformative power of the arts for the aging, and baby, for those of us who are in our 60s or older, you are singing our song. Here he is, Tim Carpenter.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So before I die, I want to grow older and gain experience and discover my inner creative soul. That's what we're about where I work. And rather than go into statistics, what I like to do is just tell a story about a single person. I grew up in an Irish family, so we're addicted to story. Storytelling was like a competitive sport at our dinner table. And I learned very early on that older people told better stories than younger people. I ended up at that end of the dinner table, and now I've made a career of it. Several years ago, I was sitting in my office. There had been a story in the Los Angeles Times about our work, about this place that we created called the Burbank Senior Artists Colony. And a woman named Suzanne Canody called me up on the phone, picked up the phone, had this amazing conversation with this woman who, in our world, is a spring chicken. She was in her 60s and had become old before her time. She had suffered a traumatic accident and was having trouble with chronic pain and depression. And she saw this article and she experienced this tickling in the back of her mind that she thought she might be a writer. And so I told her about this place, the Burbank Senior Artists Colony, and this is the first senior apartment community that was created with arts as the glue that holds it together. So on site in this place where people 55 plus live, there is a theater and there are media labs and art studios and art galleries and outdoor performance spaces. And those are matched by our intellectual amenities where we bring in college-level professors to teach classes in the arts and wellness and lifelong learning. So in other words, to re-envision the landscape in which people grow older. And Suzanne moves into this place. She's never done anything for herself. She's a single mom. She's worked 2 jobs, raised 2 kids, put them through college, and in retirement thought, I think I will do something for myself for a change. So her first order of business at the Artist Colony was to go to a writing class where the assignment was write something about conflict. So she turns in a 12-page screenplay for a short film, and those of you who are writers in the audience, starting with screenwriting as a writer is a lesson in idiocy. It's an extremely tough format to learn as your first thing to write. So she turns in this screenplay called Bandita, and frankly, when it came across my desk, what I hoped for was that it didn't suck. And I opened it and started reading, and what it was this incredible, poignant story about someone getting older and their creative response to it. And I decided to do the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life. We started a film production company. I thought, we can produce a movie. How hard is that? And so we formed this production company called The Last Gasp Productions. And I've been working in aging long enough to develop a sense of humor around it, frankly. And if you can't read the tagline on the movie poster, it's a pistol, a plan, and sensible shoes. And the screenplay tells the story of an older woman who rides the public senior bus to a liquor store and is lowered down on the handicap walker with her tennis balls on the front, saunters into the liquor store, dons a mask from the film Scream, pulls out a pistol and starts to rob the place. And during the course of the robbery, she becomes friends with the older Armenian gentleman behind the counter to the point where he lets her get away with the crime in the end. So it was this lovely, touching portrait of what we do with ourselves as we get older in the United States of America. So we make this film, and Suzanne sees her film for the first time. She wins into a competition in the Valley Film Festival in the El Portal Theater in the NoHo Arts District of North Hollywood, Los Angeles, sees her film with an audience of 350 people and gets a standing ovation as she wins the Audience Award for her film. And I remind you that this is, again, a single mother who's never done anything for herself, never wrote a word in her life before this, and this was her experience of her first act of writing. As was mentioned, I produce a radio show called Experience Talk, so we have a foot in this radio universe. And one of my heroes is Ira Glass from This American Life. So I thought, I think he might like this story, and I didn't know him, so we just called him up on the phone and said, we've got this cool story about this woman who transforms her life through the arts, and I thought, we'll get on his radio show. Ira likes the story so much that he comes out and films the first episode of his national television show, This American Life, for Showtime. And Suzanne's story ends up on national television. And so now she walks around our neighborhood and goes to Trader Joe's to shop, and she's stopped in the aisles all the time and asked, "So I got to know, did your film make it into the Sundance Film Festival?" So the moral of the story around what Suzanne means to me, and this is a big story. We have lots of stories of people transforming their lives in much smaller ways. And the reason that I like to tell this story is it is a big story, because the idea of aging in our country is ridiculously upside down. You know, our vision of retirement for the longest time was you would have a view of a golf course, and that was, you work your entire life to the fingers to the bone to earn the right to do absolutely nothing with the rest of it. And when you retired at 65 and died at 67, that was fine, but now we live until we're 114 sometimes. That's an acre of time of which to do nothing with. So Suzanne, to me, is an example of a creative spirit and what we should do. She dusted off her dreams and discovered her writer inside, and now is a poster child to the rest of the 7,000 people that we serve in 34 locations in Southern California. The model is now going on the road. We have developed and opened 2 more senior arts colonies, one in Long Beach, California, and one in North Hollywood, right around the corner from where Suzanne's film premiered. The interesting thing about the NoHo Senior Arts Colony, it's in the midst of an arts district in Los Angeles, and one of the things we did differently with this one is it has an open to the public theater in the lobby. With a box office and a marquee, we put out a request for proposals to theater companies in Los Angeles and provide them with free rent in return for programming for the residents that live there. So I think that what we have here is a model of how housing can be used to change how we view what is an important social issue in this country and transform it into something creative and healthy for all. And this is something we want to do, hopefully, across the country one day. And that is my story of aging and reinvention. I'm going to stick to it. Thank you very much.
I'm Bunky Echohawk. I'm Pawnee and Yakima. I'm based out of Denver, Colorado. I'm a full-time artist. I get inspired and motivated to do my art from injustice in the Indian country. There, are a great number of atrocities that our people faced, throughout the past 500 years. And my fuel for my art comes from how those atrocities affect us today as Americans, as Native Americans. There's a lot of ignorance, there's a lot of preconceived notions about who we are, there's a lot of misconceptions, a lot of stereotypes. And I feel like through art I can attack some of those, and I can effectively help to re-educate a public, And I think through art that can be achieved. It can set sparks off in people's minds, in people's hearts, and inspire them to want to look at these issues and want to do something about it.
Thank you, Bunky, and thank you, Tim. Those of you who know me know that we lost my mother last year at the age of 104, God bless her. And I just have to say, I'm convinced that she lasted as long as she did, in part because at the age of 88, she decided she had a talent for visual art and suddenly began to paint and found a new purpose and a new energy that just sustained her through that last decade and a half. So thank you for everything you do. God bless, and God willing, we'll all get there and join your class or theater company or whatever. Okay, our final speaker for today, our final artist today is Germaine Ingram, who came under the spell of jazz tap dance in the early 1980s when she began intensive study with the internationally acclaimed tap artist and phenomenal legend LaVaughn Robinson. Germaine has been a law professor, a litigation attorney, a civil rights lawyer, the head of a governmental law department, and was chief of staff for the School District of Philadelphia. She currently works as an educational consultant, leading us through the dance of history as informed by the history of dance. Please join me in welcoming Germaine Ingram.
That was 1994. I was dancing there with LaVaughn Robinson, my mentor, teacher, dance partner for a quarter of a century. LaVaughn stopped dancing 9 years ago, and he passed away about 5.5 years ago at the age of 81. Since 1994, there's been tremendous evolution in my dancing and in my artistic practice. These days, I think of myself as not only a dancer choreographer, but also a composer, a vocal improviser, a writer, and other things. But still, in my ear, in my spirit, in my brain, in my body, in my feet, I channel the lessons that I learned from LaVaughn, who, till his last days, considered himself a Philly street dancer. Today, my performances are embedded in events that engage audiences in discussion with artists and humanists about how music and dance shape collective memory about the history of slavery in the United States, about the genocide in Rwanda. They're embedded in an art museum's training to help docents understand how they might share painful and difficult episodes with museum audiences. My performances are embedded in a symposium on dance as a space of reflection and healing from incidents of oppression and torture. My performance is embedded in a process-driven professional learning community of about a dozen dancer choreographers who are intent on upping their engagement with improvisation, history, and social justice. They're embedded in an extended process of helping the leadership and staff of a historic house here in Philadelphia to accomplish their strategic goals of learning more about their own history and transforming their institution into a center for the study of civic activism. This is an excerpt of a recent performance that I created. This was June of this year. I created that piece for a community event. It was, as you can see, it's a site-specific piece, a community event celebrating Juneteenth. In that context, I wanted to imagine what it was like for people who had only known slavery, of course. The news of the end of legal slavery was a time for celebration, but it must have been a time of great anxiety and questioning, and that's what this piece represents. My colleague in that piece is the phenomenal violinist Diane Monroe. Embedded in performances like this one, embedded performances like this value process as much, if not more, than a specific product. It often leads to unknowable and unpredictable outcomes. They don't privilege high production. They don't tour well. They aren't easily captured on video or disseminated on YouTube. They often require close collaboration and sharing of authority with non-artists. They put art in the service of visions and interests of people and entities other than artists themselves and arts institutions. They have long timelines. They blur authorship. They aren't easily evaluated by conventional standards, and they reframe the role of audience. I'm certainly not the only artist engaging in practice that doesn't neatly fit within the guidelines of many funders. This past weekend, I participated in a symposium sponsored by the Leeway Foundation, where they were investigating the intersections of art and social change. What I heard in that context was people talking about making the object invisible, the power of cultural organizing, artists needing to belong to those communities where they aim to engage in cultural placemaking, the need to formulate new questions for the mashup and hybrid genres that are emerging. I was delighted to be part of that conversation this weekend, and I'm really pleased to be here today to continue that conversation with you.
Thank you for, I don't even know how to begin to thank you for all that. The challenge you just gave us at the end about what neatly doesn't fit, but thank you for the generosity of what you do and how you think, and that's what, for me, grounds your performance so much. And so thank you for it all, Okay. There you have it, 12 extraordinary artists that we've seen over 2 days, 7 live, 5 through the grace of technology, all reflecting on the new creative community. GIA has charged me with trying to pull this together, to kind of be the 13th donut in the proverbial baker's dozen, as it were. So what did we hear about artists, nonprofits, and innovators discussing new ideas about how art is created, presented, and experienced that will require new ways for the arts to be supported, funded, and nurtured as we go forward? That's my charge. And in a room full of people as bright as you all are, arriving with as many different daily realities and different priorities as we all have, I guarantee you we all took away different things from the presentations, and we could spend the rest of the morning just turning to each other and sharing the things that struck us most powerfully or the perspectives that we heard most vibrantly. Speaking only for myself, which is all I can do, I heard certain patterns echoing and re-echoing throughout the presentations. I heard notions of global citizenship and inter/international/transcultural heritage that we heard voiced first by Fabiana Rodriguez, but that echoed through Byron Al Young, and I hope this isn't cheating to refer to yesterday's extraordinary plenary keynote from Ariel Alegria Hudes in that fantastic address. I heard the opportunity and the responsibility that artists have to redefine the time signature, to hold space in the unique ways that only artists can hold them. Premises that were articulated, as you'll recall, by Karen Kwani and Marshall Davis Jones, but that every speaker embodied as they took the stage. I heard the irrefutable relationship between arts and social justice. Fabiana started us off. Germaine just sounded it at the end for us today. And surely one of the reasons that the arts are often the first area of attack by totalitarian authorities. I heard disintegration of formerly rigid line divides. I heard the disintegration of the formerly rigid definitions of who and where art could happen. Redefinitions of venues, as ICE does, redefinitions of who's empowered to act, and indeed the pleasure and the new responsibility artists like Claire are taking as they seize roles formerly held by others, especially in the business terrain. I heard themes of transcendence, whether we transcend boundaries of national line or boundaries of gravity, as Trey McIntyre noted in his presentation, or of age, as Tim told us, or of despair, as Marshall Davis Jones did as he stood in the center of that Brooklyn Bridge. Sometimes explicitly, sometimes implicitly, I thought I heard heroism and courage, persistence and belief, optimism that change is possible. Ideas frequently offered through a filter of deeply moving, powerfully told, occasionally horrifying, occasionally humorous, personal narrative and family legend grounded in simple story. The grandfather playing the piano, the loss of the friend that led to Candy Chang's work, the Peruvian migration, the Cambodian refugee drinking his own urine, the Latino cousin writing novels in jail, and underneath it all, a generosity of spirit that these artists would offer themselves, their hearts, their thoughts to us in this context. As much as our professed theme, I thought what I heard that was mostly new was new people, new journeys, new stakes, new urgency, all unfolding, as we know, in a new environment. An environment, I would argue, has made the arts vulnerable for far longer than just the economic downturn of the last 5 years. But if I'm going to be personally confessional, while I heard a lot that was contemporary, to draw on Claire's distinction again this morning, I less often heard things that I was convinced were new. And in fact, I was powerfully struck by undercurrents of what was not new. The long tradition of public wall art and working with children, the constant asset of time and presence and uniqueness, of the conscious heritage and homage we paid to long traditions and to the masters like Levon Robinson who brought us along, even as we are bending and shaping and changing those traditions, as every generation of artists does. I heard the essential old age drill of technique and practice and inspiration from the past, inspiration that we heard registered in the litany of old titles from that poetry award winner, that high school girl yesterday, who in 3 sentences managed to remind us of Red Badge of Courage, Moby Dick, Sound and the Fury, and more. I heard about painting butterflies in the artist's dedication to be a single voice, to speaking in poetic cadence, not something new, but a reminder of what Homer did thousands of years ago. Echoes of old ideas about how the arts are created, experienced, and presented. And when the artist talked about funding, and I'm going to cheat here and refer to the artist pre-conference, I didn't hear a lot about hunger for new means of funding. Frankly, what I've been told most frequently in those sessions and in the artist pre-conference was the value of the oldest forms of funding: flexible, multi-year, unrestricted support, and the need for encouragement, for validation, even as Ann Carlson said, I just need a handwritten thank you note from time to time. Needs that are less about new ways of funding than they are crying for us to have new sensibilities, new ways to listen, the need for an ever new willingness on our part to rethink and challenge and to be open, and like the artist, to live with ambiguity, to rely on instinct, and to have the courage to challenge ourselves again and again and again to be better and better at what we do. In short, I think what these 2 days have taught me personally is that when we talk about new, I think of either or. And in their own ways, the artists were saying, think it's both and. It's an expansive vision that will complicate our work as we are now caught in an eternally Solomonic quandary of philanthropy. How are we going to nurture, promote, and fulfill the aspirations of the dreams of a new generation of artists without dismantling the still vibrant, vital, seminal achievements of the past? The hunger to fulfill those aspirations is what I heard most from this audience. As you leaned forward, as you laughed at times, as you gasped at times, as you sat in hushed silence at times, celebrating courage and audacity, creativity, craft, heroism, we were all reminded of the importance, the intellectual importance, the emotional importance, the social importance of the arts. Zelda Fitch-Handler, the great founder of the Arena Stage in Washington, many years ago said to me, if the world were a perfect place, we would not need the arts. And as our world, and especially our own country, seem to me to be increasingly imperfect, we arguably need the arts more now than ever. To close with something that my mother once said to me, and my dad as well, from those to whom much is given, much is expected. And whether that much refers to material wealth or intellectual wealth or depth of feeling or heart, the wealth has been given to us in differing degrees, but it has been given to us. The quest for us, I think, is to reach deeper intellectually, to feel more deeply, to hear more deeply, to listen more deeply. We are lucky. We are privileged. We are blessed to be the conduits, the channels of the generosity of others, to be able to nurture those dreams in a quest for an ever more perfect world. Dear God, let's not fuck it up. And with that, Tomer Peterson.